I quoted page 17, paragraph 1. I hope she'll be a fool, that the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. And then my analysis of this was women during this time period were treated more as property by most men than they were humans. I think that in this passage, Daisy is saying this because she knows in order for her daughter to be successful, she has to be a beautiful fool in order for her daughter to be successful, being a beautiful fool is the only way in doing so.
What was the page and paragraph on that?
17, paragraph 1.
Oh, I should have that book out.
That was really well stated,
Thank you, Drew.
and I would have to agree with that statement.
Wait, what time period was this?
The 20s.
The 20s?
Yeah.
Book set in 1922.
Oh, okay.
And
Something
this was a time where there were flappers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chains. The women were out there.
Well, no, because women were always like.
That's what it say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fisher. Women were always like, up until this time, women, like, there was always like one thing that a woman should do, and like that's how she got her respect. If it was like having kids or like being the woman in the house, and like this was a time where like it started changing, and they started like, wanting to get out of themselves and like have more freedoms and have more rights. Yeah. So being a fool during that time, like a woman like going like it showed like they had a lot of passion. They wanted to do things their way, and they felt like they needed rights. So that's why it was probably why they thought that that you thought that a beautiful foolish woman was like the best. So.
True.
So you're kind of disagreeing with what he said?
Oh, not really.
So you said that it was showing how women were kind of objectified in the 20s?
Yeah, and then I was saying like because the men mainly treated them more as like property than like things, so in order for them to like be respected by the men and stuff, they kind of just like abided to that by like doing whatever they say or do as like being a quote unquote fool.
Yeah, that's what search
So
is.
being a fool is kind of like a good thing, because you're getting noticed. Like,
Yeah. But they were doing like inappropriate behaviors to get noticed. So
Yeah.
they're like acting out so they can get noticed.
I guess he's just kind of desperate for attention.
Yeah.
Kind of shows that.
Well, because
Yeah.
men have never respected women in America, so they're specifically
Not
trying.
right.
No, now they do. I'm saying so far to the 1920s. Come on, buddy.
Well, yeah, because before that was like a Victorian era of women, so they were all like had to abide and dress by like a certain way, and they were under like strict control by their like husband, and so like this book kind of shows the evolution of them and how they're starting to change and like act out and want to be their own person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What was it? Daisy? Daisy was her name?
Yeah.
Is Daisy, I'm trying to remember, Daisy's the one whose husband treats her very badly, right? Where she has a scar from her husband? Is that Daisy?
I think, I don't know.
Do you have a textual reference for that?
What?
Do you have a textual reference?
I don't have a textual reference from that.
Did you-
I didn't write that down.
But you noticed it?
I noticed it.
Yeah.
I noticed that like, but at the same time, Daisy was happy. Like, she was very happy and full of life in the chapter.
Mhm.
So even though like her husband was abusive, she kind of like put up with it because she wanted to get noticed.
Mhm.
So I don't really know what that means with the scar, but maybe she enjoyed getting beaten because it meant that she was getting noticed.
I don't think that's the reason.
Okay. I'm just saying my opinion.
Or maybe she just stayed with him because he was important, and she'd get attention if she
Right,
knew that
he's
she was
rich.
like
Yeah.
associated with him.
He was
That
rich.
might be why it
To
goes
stay
back.
in good company.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
make her look like the bad person if she left him or something like that.
Yeah.
So she stays.
And she'd be a
acts-
nobody if she was
Yeah,
single.
if she
Yeah.
left him, and everyone would be like,
Mhm.
yeah.
She'd
With
lose
she'd
how
be like an
people
outsider.
viewed women, like a woman that got divorced back then, that would be
Yeah.
even worse.
Yeah, that's why probably she just like put up with it, not because she liked being beaten.
Yeah. So I spoke from page 6, paragraph number 1. And this quote says, "I'm still a little afraid of missing something if I forgot that. As my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth." So I asked a question on this, and I said, does Nick believe that only rich people can have standout good qualities, or can poor people be born with natural skills like rich people?
Yeah.
And how does that apply to our life today?
Yeah, I put that as one of my quotes as well, and I said that he what he's saying is that he thinks people are born with different morals. Like some people are born with more evil morals, more skills or qualities than others, and that's what he's saying. But I believe that that's not the case, and that it's based off where you grow up, what your influences are, and like because you can be born innocent and then like you grow up, and you depending where you grow up. You
So
can
what
get
I'm
certain
asking
morals.
is like, do you feel that if you're not growing up with like rich people and you're not having the opportunities that they have, do you think that the poor are like less fortunate, meaning like they don't have those opportunities, kind of like what he's saying, they're not born with
What I
natural
would say
skills
is
almost?
that everyone has the chance, but it's easier for some people.
Right.
Yeah,
Because just for take example, sports. If you go to a super big school and you can pay to go out to the camps and the showcases, colleges are going to notice you. But if you're poor and you can't pay to send your film to colleges and you just kind of go along doing
Yeah.
whatever, it's going to be hard to get noticed. So
Mhm.
there is definitely an
Yeah,
advantage.
but
to
it's
having-
yeah, like if you're born into a poor family or born to a rich family, you still have that same potential.
Yeah, you still have a
Right.
chance. It's
It's,
just
it's saying here that they're born unequal. I think they're born unequal based on like if they're born in a poor family or a family, but they all have the same potential. It just depends what they get led up with, like what their influences are and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And so I still think everyone does have that chance, but others are given better opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And maybe he's saying that to like, 'cause maybe he is like evil, as it said in the quote.
No, it just is kind of
Factors,
saying
yeah.
that pretty much he feels like it's like they're unequal at birth is exactly what he says.
Maybe that's how he feels. Maybe he feels he's
Yeah, it's his opinion speaking that he feels like rich people and poor people are not the same when they're born.
I thought
That was
a bird.
A
That was a
bird.
bird. Big bird flying?
Yeah.
Can we go see if it's splatted?
I thought it,
No, we got time.
I thought it as like
It didn't hit hard enough.
we're all born in like a sin nature and stuff, so technically we're all created equal like in the image of God to kind of to put a spiritual twist to it.
Mm.
One of my quotes kind of has something to do with this. It's on page 12, paragraph 4. It was from Tom. He said this. He said, "Civilization's going to pieces. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by this man Goddard?" So I noticed he was pushing that book a lot, so I'm kind of interested what that's about. But it kind of says how he has like a negative view on civilization. Just kind of thinks it's going to all go into bad.
Who?
Tom,
Oh.
Mhm.
On page 12.
that page 12, paragraph 4. Sergio, do you have a quote?
Yeah, I do. I have one that kind of goes with yours and how like corruption and stuff about the world, and it's on page 6, chapter 1. It's when I came back from the east last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and a sort of moral tension forever. I wanted no more riotous exertions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. So it's basically kind of like what you were saying. That he thinks that the world is like a corrupt place based off like, I don't know, his travel or something. That the human race is evil, but even though there's good, there's plenty of evil and corrupt places in this world. So I guess that's like what he realized when he came back. But I don't know what's the deal with Gatsby, but it seems like he would be a good person
I actually have the same quote right
and
now.
a light to the world, because based off what he says, that Gatsby's the only person that's exempt from his reaction. So there has to be something about him.
Also kind of sets up the rest of the book.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of building the character of Gatsby,
Mhm.
kind of like an intro.
Mhm. On page 8, paragraph 4, I wrote down, "And so with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves growing on trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer." And I said, like, with this, like, reflecting on this chapter, I feel like this quote sums up kind of like what we're getting introduced to so far, that the rich live in almost a movie-like state where everything goes their way, even including the weather and sunshine, as you see in this quote. Like, it's kind of like summing up that growing up in West Egg and stuff, like, they pretty much, it's almost like a given, where the rich are living this, like, movie-like life,
Yeah.
and you don't really see the poor. Like, they're just focusing on how fortunate the rich are.
Maybe that's why Tom, like in the quote, says civilization's going to pieces, is because the rich is almost kind of getting numb from
Yep.
the poor because they're living this movie lifestyle,
Mhm.
which is like it's all just a big show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the community's so split up. It's like the rich are over here and the poor over there. And it's like when you have that separation, then it can lead to bad things, and so that makes sense.
Patrick, do you have another quote?
Yeah, I just thought this was an interesting quote, like it gave insight to this person's character. I quoted, or it's in page 15, the middle of the page, and then I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There's a bird on the lawn that I think must be a nightingale. Come over on the Cunard or White Star Line, he's singing away. And that was Daisy speaking, and I just found it very interesting that Daisy, like the way Daisy described the outdoors, and that it describes like a lot more about her character and helps us further understand the way she like thinks.
Wait, what was the quote?
I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There's a bird on the lawn that I think must be a nightingale. Come over on the Cunard or White Star Line, he's singing away.
So it's like happiness and like romanticism. So
Yeah.
like,
Cause like I thought it was like, back to like how Drew was talking about how she was like abused and stuff, she finds like her happiness and stuff through the outdoors maybe.
Yeah, and also just like I said in the second quote, they're describing what it's like outside,
Mhm.
and like
It's like a
their
movie.
their surroundings are like perfect almost, and kind of like what I said on page 9, paragraph 2. I lived at West Egg, the least fashionable of the two. Though this was a most superficial tag to express the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them, my house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the Sound and squeezed between two huge places that rented for $12,000 or $15,000 a season. I said, connecting this to my life, I can relate to this quote because sometimes I feel that the way that this quote is expressing. I live around a lot of rich, very fortunate people just like Nick. Nick tells that he lives next to wealthy people, and I could as well say that myself. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in the world that this is describing because I was very fortunate to grow up in a house where my parents had money and they were able to send me to private school education, and I was very fortunate, kind of like, I mean, obviously my life isn't a movie like this book is like talking about, but sometimes it is like that because I've been very fortunate, and it's not like I'm growing up in a third world country where probably I could have been born into, but instead I've been fortunate to grow up and live in a place like Roswell, which is a beautiful place with beautiful houses and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like Nick sometimes, where it's like I'm squeezed in between two really beautiful mansions.
yeah, it makes it seem like you have to be born into this fortunate family in this these big houses and these big communities, like find happiness and like have a good opportunity, but that's not always true.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could grow up in a family that's like not fortunate in a poor area and still find some good opportunities. You might need to work a little harder, but you
Right.
can still find happiness. Like people like that are so happy. Like for example, my family or my dad, he grew up just with his mom and his sister, and they didn't have any money. Mom had to work like 3 jobs, and like look where he got us. He was able to find an opportunity, and now because of that, I have this opportunity. So it's not always true, but it's like.
Yep.
And I have one of my quotes kind of ties into this. It says, I'm still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that. As my father snobbishly suggested, I am snobbishly a repeat. A sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth.
Yeah, he already said that one.
Oh, he did?
But
Yeah.
you can add on to it if you have anything else.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
What I kind of got at like the overall chapter is that they all kind of just have like a blind eye towards like the poor people right now, and they don't really seem to have any care or like need or want to like even think about them, and they're all like just in their bubble that they have like no thought or care in the world whatsoever about the people that are like lesser than them.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any more quotes, Serge?
Yeah, hold on. I have one more. On page 5, it says, whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all people in this world haven't had the advantages you've had. So it's basically going on as the same thing as they're saying if you're born into like a wealthy family in a good community, you have more advantages than others. You do, but there's you could have other problems. Like there's many people that like have like a rich family and they pass the business down to their kids and then they just like fail and don't succeed. And it's not always the case. Maybe people that are poor maybe have even a better advantage because they have that motivation. And so it makes sense like what this quote's saying, but at the same time that's not always true. So that's what I believe.
I thought, or another quote I had, it was kind of like a random, not so good quote. It was just interesting to me. It was on page 10 at the very bottom of the page, and it was he took down his drink as if it were a drop in the bottom of a glass. How do you ever get anything done is beyond me, and my like questioning in response to that is like, I couldn't tell who it was talking or whatever, but I said I can see the person wherever they are as an avid drunk, and they're obviously good at drinking because they're able to get stuff done, but people around him think that he never gets, like they're confused on how he gets stuff done, I guess.
So why'd you think that was interesting?
I don't know, I just thought it was interesting how it talked, the part where I thought was interesting where it talked about how he took down a drink as if it were a drop in the bottom of a glass. That just like stood out to me for some reason.
That sounds like
You can. That's how to hold his liquor.